council who have a history of issuing complaints to me, and nearly all of them, I go back to them and say, you need to sort yourself out with regards to this. This is just because you're having squabbles amongst yourself. There is no breach to the code of conduct, and you must stop using this to actually make try and get somebody else to deal with your internal squabbles. So you'll see there that I've dealt with that last complaint and have said that I need to have a word with them to get it so that they are aware of how to conduct themselves in future. And I will be looking to do that once the relaxation of the lockdown allows that to happen. I don't see that it will be able to deal with it virtually. I would like to attend one of their meetings and perhaps do some training with them in conjunction with the NCALC as well. So this report is intended to provide you with an overview of volume and nature of the standards conducts of the standards complaints which have been received. And if there are any questions or comments, more than happy to deal with that. And what I've suggested within the recommendations is that following this meeting, I would make the necessary amendments to this report and then put it to full council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I've lost you because can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Well, I assume I've lost a picture and I've been asked to sign it on an email address. It's all so complicated. So are there any comments on this report? Anyone want to make a point about them?
Chairman, I would like to make a comment. I mean, I support this report, but I'd like to make a suggestion. Even though we're not having an annual meeting next year, as I understand it, we will have a report next year, presumably, Andrew, won't we?
If the opportunity arises to put in another annual report, then I'm more than happy.
Well, what I was thinking was, I think it would be quite good to look back since this council came into operation and record formally how many complaints we've had since that time, because I, as an interested member of the public thereafter in May, I would like to see how we compare with the other authorities in the unitary and look forward to seeing their complaints, because I think we've done very well, i.e. by not having very many, but I had no idea how many Northampton Borough, for instance, receive over the year, and I think that would be quite an interesting little piece of work.
Any comments on that one? Okay.
Right. Sorry, Andrew.
Sorry, Councillor Hollowell.
Yeah. Can I go, Chairman?
Yes, absolutely.
There are 4 points that I wanted to mention regarding the report. The first one is 3.2 on page 19. The Constitution gives much more detail than this. I mean, all that we've got in the report is determine the outcome of individual complaints received, as though, and it's certainly the case in the last year, that the monitoring officer has dealt with all of the complaints received. But generally speaking, there is a process there which is not really made clear to anybody who is new to the council in the last 6 years. The process being that the monitoring officer receives the complaints, that he vets them effectively to see if there's a prima facie case. If there's not, he returns it. If there is, he tries to resolve it by mediation. But then if that fails, then it goes to a hearing, and the committee, the standards committee, make the decision. So although I don't think it's necessary to copy out all of the detail in the Constitution, I think that general process does need to be explained. It's not just the monitoring officer that makes the decisions in the great global thing. The second point is 3.3 on page 20. And it's this question which I've touched on in the email that I sent round about delegated authority. I think the Constitution does explain the duties of the monitoring officer, but when you look at the schedule of enactments at the end, there is nothing at all to do with the Localism Act 2011. And that contrasts markedly with some of the published, because these have to be published, this contrasts quite markedly with, say, East Northants Council, which is a very similar council to us, a large rural area, where that goes into almost two sides of A4 on the 2011 Act. So we really, that scheme should be amended to allow for whatever the monitoring officer is doing, or anybody else other than full council. In 3.5 on page 20, this is the reports of the investigations that you've carried out. You mentioned in the introduction that the names of the councils and councillors has been anonymised. And I don't know why. I think the Standards Committee, we should know who these people are and the action that you took, even if that information is pink paper. But, I draw your attention to the second report on the agenda on page 24 and the section on transparency. And I think really we need to be more transparent there. Certainly the committee need to know. We need to know if we've got a particular problem in a particular area, and it sounds from what you said as though we do. And finally, final point is, again from my email, a lot of members still won't know who the independent persons are, and really they should be here now at this meeting. And it's the same with the rep from the parish and town councils. They really, they should be attending this meeting, and we don't know who they are. I don't absolutely know how many independent persons we've got. We originally had 2, and then because the monitoring officer of the day said, well, I've got 2 councils now, Cherwell and Southampton, so I need a 3rd independent person. Well, we agreed to that at full council, but I'm not sure where we stand now, and I wouldn't even know if there is a 3rd person who they are. So they're the things I think that this report has got to be by way of a catch-up on 6.5 years of work, and it ought to include some of those basic things, particularly for the benefit of people who've joined the council since, those of us with bad memories, and going forward, the new councils. And incidentally, I've looked at all the other councils in Northamptonshire, and they all meet on a regular basis, either once a year, twice a year, or the borough council 4 times a year. Goodness knows what the county do. I couldn't work that out at all, but never mind. But they're the issues that I would raise on the report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Right, Mr. Hunkin, I'd like to come back on some of those.
Yep, absolutely.
I do agree, Holwell, that I think we ought to be meeting. We ought to meet really once a year at least, even if everyone has behaved themselves, just to report in, and particularly if there are developments coming through, like this report at the end, just so that we can all see each other's faces, hopefully face to face.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pick up all of those points. I'll take you back to 2013 when you actually did put the arrangements in place with regards to this. And those arrangements actually did give a lot of authority to the monitoring officer. And that was, in essence, to deal with all of the complaints through to their conclusion, unless there was a need for a hearing. And even then, if I had a member who said that they were not happy with my recommendation and that they were not going to accept it, I then have the authority to see whether or not I can actually deal with that through local determinization. And I've had to do that on one occasion to actually say, to point out what the consequences of not accepting my recommendations would be, and in the end they decided that they would accept them. So the only time that you need a hearing is when the councillor doesn't accept my recommendations. So that's the agreement that you put in place in 2013, and obviously that is different than some of the arrangements in other authorities, but those are the arrangements that you've got. Here, it could form part of the scheme of delegation, and again, if I was writing the scheme of delegation now, rather than inheriting one that you've already got, I would include elements of the Localism Act. But you are covered by that because you have set it very clearly in the arrangements on how you deal with how you deal with complaints of this nature. So you are covered with regards to that. Transparency. I've anonymized it because Councillor Hollowell there talks about the need to be transparent, and what's actually said in the ethical report. I understand that entirely. And I would hope that we are being transparent by holding this meeting in public so that people can actually see the complaints that we've received. What I could do, if you wished, would be to send around more details of those complaints if you would wish me to. But obviously, if you were to do it in committee, you would have to do that in private, and then you would be excluding the public from any of your determinations with regards to that. So, but I can do that if that's what if that's what the committee would wish to see. With regard to independent persons, yes, we do have 3, and yes, they are active. Sometimes too active from my point of view, in that the arrangements that we have means that I have to contact all 3 of them, or that's certainly what customer practice has been, to get their views, when in essence, I shouldn't need to do that. So they are more than involved. They are involved in all aspects right at the beginning. They work with me to determine whether or not there should be an investigation carried out. And they also look to see whether or not they are in agreement with my recommendations. What I would suggest is that I amend the report to include details of those independent persons, picking up Councillor Hollowell's point about the fact that it would be good for people to know who they are. And I quite agree with that. And more than happy to, adapt the report to pick up that point. They are able to come to this meeting. They are not a part of your committee, though, so they have no voting rights. And again, due to the low volume of cases that were there, and because of the fact that they were extremely straightforward, I did not invite them to this meeting. Now, if you wish me to invite them to future meetings, again, I'm happy to do so, and it would be perfectly right to do that if that's what you wished. I was trying to keep this meeting nice and simple, but again, I can change that. If I can go on to Councillor Barnes' points. Just a little bit of clarity there, if I may, in that. So first of all, we're saying that it would be good to have another report which looked back, and Councillor Barnes, you use the words over the lifetime of this council. That's a long time, but would you be happy if we actually tried to do something which follows on from the arrangements that you put in place in 2012 so that we can get an overall picture? Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think that would be a good start, but I just think we're losing our knowledge and heritage of this council. That would be my only point, really. It's not something we're going to put in the book that we're producing, obviously, but I just think for the record, it would be interesting for future generations.
It could be. What I would say is, if we were to go back to 2012, when you put your arrangements in place, you'd actually be looking at 8 years of data there, which I think would be relevant, and maybe even if you went back further than that, when you were under a different regime, if you remember, you were under the standards board at that time. I think we would find it difficult to actually do that. And I just wonder whether or not 8 years would be more than enough to give you the current history under the current regime.
Well, maybe that might be a good compromise.
Yeah, I think that would be, I would support that, I think. Are there any comments that anyone wants to make on Stephen's and Andrew's exchange?
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
It's Anne Addison. I'm rather concerned. I think that we are a committee. We've been elected as a committee, and I personally think that we should have known about these complaints. I'm not saying they should have come to the committee, but I think at least we as committee members should have known that complaints are coming in, because it seems to me it's pointless as being a committee if we don't know what's going on. That's what we're here for, to look at complaints, to see what people don't like about our council, or they don't like about parish councils, for example. So I think that, frankly, that we should have known about these complaints. Thank you, Chair.
So it would be your suggestion that in future, if any more complaints come in, mindful that we're into our last 7 months of existence, that we would like to know when there is a complaint and have some detail of it.
Yes, please.
Yes, Andrew, how's that one? That seems to me a fair point.
It certainly seems a fair point. I would just reiterate that I have followed your arrangements that you agreed. And so what we're saying is that the arrangements would need to change.
Yeah.
I've got a problem doing that at all, but just to reinforce the fact that I have followed the arrangements which you put in place in 2013.
Yes, I just think. I mean, I think there is definitely, as far as I was concerned. I mean, there is a disconnect that can easily build up between these things, and one thinks there's nothing happening at all. Actually, very little is happening, thank goodness. But nevertheless, we want to know. It is our job, I think, as members of this committee, to know what it is happening, either with our fellow councillors or with in the parishes.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that. I understand exactly what's being said here. No problem with that. Can I suggest that you pass a recommendation for me to look at the arrangement that we have in place and to agree it with the chair of this committee, and then to circulate that so that you get more details of the cases on which we're working.
I think that would be fair. Are we agreed on that, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair, can I just say one thing, or maybe two? Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a way forward. The two things that I'm still not really happy about. One thing is an easy one to deal with, but the first thing it is to do with the delegated powers. I don't dispute what Andrew has said. And yes, the duties of the monitoring officer are covered, in the Constitution, but the schedule is not up to date, and I'm afraid that is the thing that we could be caught up on, and it contrasts markedly. If you were to look, for example, at the county council one, I mean, the county council are not the best local authority on the planet, but if you look at their schedule of delegated powers, well, they could almost put it into book form, because their duties are much wider than ours, I know, but it's much more detailed and much more up to date. And I think that for what it's worth, in the last few months of this council, we ought to try to close our books in a tidy fashion, so that we do compare reasonably well with the other authorities that we're combining with. And the other point is, which has not really been dealt with, we've just talked about the independent persons, and thank you for the information and what you're going to do there. But what do we do about the parish council / town council reps? We ought to find out, I think, whether the existing ones are still alive. I don't know whether they are or not, but still willing, if they are, still willing to serve. And again, they should be invited to the next meeting of the committee, which ought to be, well before closure date, D-Day.
Chair, if I can pick up both those points. I'll pick up the town and parish members at the moment. You have spaces for 3, and you only have 1 at the moment, so there are 2 spaces. We found an email from 2017 which acknowledged the fact that we only had the 1, and it was then said that at the next meeting that we had, we would look to appoint 2 others. So again, we can do that. It would depend on the number of complaints we have come in as to how much work there is, or we could just carry on with the one that we've got at the moment, knowing that you've got a link into town and parish councils. So, sorry, if I can do the second point as well. which is not really to do with complaints. It's more to do with our delegated authority schedule. Just to say, it is completely up to date. We have a schedule of delegated authority. Alongside that schedule goes a table which shows changes in job title. So if you look at the schedule, you'll see that a lot of the job titles actually don't link back to our organizational structure at the moment. But alongside that is a table so that we know that the head of development management, for example, is now the assistant director for planning and economy. There is also a further file which I have, which records all of the changes which have been made through legislation and which need to be reflected in that schedule. So the schedule needs to be updated with regards to those parts, those new bits of legislation which come in, but they are very, very few at the moment. There's changes in legislation, but it hasn't meant that there's been a need to change any delegations. So, for example, just to give an example of that, if I may, you'll be aware that there's a bill going through at the moment looking at allowing off sales and alcohol to be consumed on pavements. So at the moment we are looking at that and looking to see what delegated authority is required for that. And there's a report which we're coming through to council on that in July. So that's the kind of thing which we would pick up. That's a new bit of legislation, but they are very, very few and far between. So, Chair, I don't know what you would like to do about town and parish.
Well,
Chair,
Chair,
could I just cut in for a moment to go back to this point and clear it up? The schedule's not up to date. It doesn't even mention the Localism Act. The version which is published on the council's website does not go as far as 2011.
Yeah, I covered that just now by saying that obviously you've got your agreement in place. So the delegated authority is there. It just isn't within the schedule itself, and it doesn't need to be. I can put it in if members wish, but the delegated authority is there through the agreement which we put in place as a standards committee back in 2013.
Well, there's little point in having a schedule on the website which is if it's not up to date, and it's not up to date.
Is it possible?
I can't really add any more to that, I'm afraid.
Is it possible to just bring it up so that it does reflect the amendments made in 2013?
I can do that. I'm still making the point because I think it's an important point that the delegation is there, and it's there for the arrangements you put in place, even if it isn't reflected in the schedule. But I'm happy to change it if
I think it makes sense to, if possible, it's not too much of a thing, because it should be, if it's a schedule is on our website, then it should be up. It should reflect truly what we have delegated.
Chairman, it's Sandra. Could I ask Andrew a question, please?
Yeah.
Andrew, how do we acquire these representatives from the town and parish councils? Do they volunteer themselves? Do we go through NAOC? Does the lovely Danny Moody choose them? How does it happen?
I'm going to have to pass on that one, Councillor Barnes. I will talk to
because
Danny.
I think it's really important, actually. I mean, Anne may be able to throw some light on this. Does it come up through the parish forum, Anne?
Chairman, I can.
It certainly is something that could be discussed surely at the parish forum, because I'm clerk to 3 parish councils, and I have no idea how we actually get hold of our representatives from parish councils, because we have a heck of a lot of parish councils out there, and I think frankly at times we do tend to ignore them. So perhaps we should discuss it at the parish forum, because that's a very good place to do so.
Chair, I think Tash may have the answer to this with her long history.
I was just going to advise that when we changed the arrangements came into place in 2012, and it was agreed that the Standards Committee would still include parish council members, the monitoring officer at the time actually wrote to all parish councils and sought nominations, or asked that they circulate to their parish councillors, who then submitted a mini application just setting out why they thought they would be suitable for the role, because obviously it's important to note there is a role profile for the parish reps, and they need to be aware of what their role is. So perhaps that could be an approach to take as well again, and then perhaps leave to Andrew in consultation with the chairman to review any requests. I do recall at the time though that we weren't inundated with volunteers, but that was what, 2012, so times have changed and there may be more people who are willing to undertake such a role.
The present representative, Andrew, you told me yesterday, I mean, is she still around? And is she not active? I mean, does she know she's on the...
Chair, the simple answer is I don't know, and I'd rather not put the name out in public here,
Right.
just in case, if that's okay. Again, I'm
Right.
more than happy to
Yeah.
circulate that.
So I
but,
didn't say.
Yeah.
I think she is around actually, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just conscious that I would have thought one. I mean, given the amount of cases we seem to be getting, I would have thought one was enough. And if that person is still around and active, well, that's fine. Otherwise, we probably do need to try and find someone else. That would be my view. But we are only talking now about the next 7 months. So it is what, I mean, more important is what happens in West Northamptonshire in the future, I would have thought. And some of that, you know, thing about parish councils should go in to their thinking, given the fact that probably the Northampton doesn't have any parish councils at all. So that might be quite an interesting one in the future, but that's not for us.
Chairman, could I suggest we actually have two people, because if this person who we don't know who it is actually is struck down with COVID or anything else, we'd be in the cart, wouldn't we? Yeah. So I do think there should be two in case something happens to the only person.
Chair, sorry, all right.
I was going to suggest, Andrew, that you get in touch with the person, see whether that they're still active and able to help. And if any of us, I mean, I would have thought we could try to seek out some of the sort of more senior members of parish councils and ask one of them to be a volunteer. I mean, we should be able to do that ourselves, I would have thought, almost.
Yeah, it depends what we're looking to do here. If I may, you know, obviously you decided back in 2013 that you would have these three town and parish people co-opted onto the board. So let's look at their role. There isn't much of a, if this was the independent persons that we were talking about, I would be concerned if we didn't have any, but we have got them all in place. They have a role to play in every single complaint that we have here. The town and parish council co-optees haven't. In essence, they just help us to link back into the town and parish councils. And I wonder how active your parish and town councils forums were back then. You know, I don't know, but they are active now. We meet with them very regularly. And if we were thinking that the outcome that we want from this is to make sure that town and parish councils understand the standards regime and our role in that, then I could actually do that through a forum, which I think would probably be a better way through than trying to get another co-optee on. So my suggestion, but obviously this is for members to decide, my suggestion would be that I talk to the current co-optee that we've actually got to see whether or not that person wishes to continue in that role and to leave it there. But if members wish me to get a second one, then obviously that's what I would do.
Any thoughts? I mean, we are only talking now about the last 7 months, and given the fact that there have not been too many cases in the last 5 years, I would have thought we could let's see if this person is still active, in my view, anyway.
Okay.
John, it's Sandra again. I have an anxiety that just because we've got somebody, they should continue until we finish, because in most places you don't do it for life. You have a term of office. Presumably we've never had that, but it's just like the auditors looking at you. You should have a change so you don't get a cosy relationship. I'm not suggesting they may have, but I do think that we should go out and recruit 1 or 2 new people, because I think that would be much more open and democratic.
Can I ask, Chairman, please? When you sent out the invitation for us all to join this committee meeting, was the invitation sent out to this, I think it's a lady from the parish councils, the representatives, was the invitation sent out to her? Because if it was, why hasn't she A, appeared, or B, sent apologies? So there's obviously not very much activity there. So I think picking up Councillor Barnes's suggestion that we really have to get to grips. It doesn't matter that we've only got 7 months to go. You could have an enormous problem appearing between now and then. I mean, let's hope we don't, and we probably won't. But the thing is, we could. And therefore, we would all have to meet together, and it would be very important to have somebody from the parishes. Please, I do feel that we push the parish councils to the bottom of our list, and I think that's a very big mistake to make. So I would like to know if A, we sent the invitation out to this person, and B, if this person responded. And if she didn't, then she couldn't be particularly interested. So then we must do something about it. And this bogey about there's only 7 months to go. Well, for goodness sake, we have to be active within the 7 months that we've got left. We can't just sit back and say, oh, terribly sorry, we haven't got long in this life. We're going to die in 7 months' time. Let's get a grip of ourselves, for goodness sake. Let's start working as a committee. Thank you, Chairman. Bit angry.
Yes, but I mean, there's no point in getting someone on and getting them all excited and then doing nothing with them. But Andrew, just answer that question. Was an invitation sent to this person?
No, an invitation wasn't sent to that person because it took a lot of digging to actually find out in the last few days who that person was. I talked about the email was in 2013. I'm getting the clear impression here that there's a need to change the arrangements because the committee isn't happy with the involvement that it's got at the moment. Like I said, we are doing it in accordance with the agreement and the arrangements we've got in place. But it is obvious that the committee wants to be more involved in this. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I'm more than happy to look at the arrangements we've got in place to make it that you are more involved. As I said before, I am following the arrangements that you put in place. They are obviously not right for you. So I am more than happy to work with the chair to get those changed. So
can we go ahead on those lines, everyone? Is that
Chairman, can I just say something? Just to clarify, I mean, the last time the committee met, we had Peter Bing, Jackie Hart and Sandra Lemon as parish council, town council reps. So the last time we met, they were the 3. Now, I don't know if they're still on there.
Peter Bing has died about 2 years ago.
Okay, so we can cross Peter Bing off. It's just a question of whether we go to the remaining 2 or whether we do as Sandra suggests. I think it was Sandra suggested advertising it in the same way that Natasha, because this is what we did last time. We did advertise it around all of the parish councils in the district, and you see, it would be nice to get some parish councillors on at this stage. First of all, we don't know there's not going to be a hearing before we end as a council, and we would need their input then. And secondly, we certainly should be having an annual meeting before the end of the life of Northants Council. So we do need people, and if in a way, if we could start training people up in our little time left, they might like to go on to the West Northants Council Standards Committee, and we might be able to you know, push some of the South Northants influence again into that new body. So I think it's well worth filling these posts. Whether we should, the two remaining people, whether we want to consider them or whether we write to them and thank them for their service of doing very little over the last 6 years, but nonetheless they've been available to us, you know, and then advertise it for either 1, 2 or 3 people. That's all I want to say, Chair.
Chairman, as I said earlier, more than happy to change the agreement to do that. You know, like I said, I've picked up loud and clear that you want to have more involvement in this process, so I've agreed. If you're happy for me to do that, then I'll do that with you, Chair. Just going back to the town and parish councils, I will reiterate that only one of those is still with us as a town, and I believe that the other one actually resigned from the parish council of which they were a member. But again, more than happy to be guided by this committee. And as Natasha said earlier, you know, we had a process X number of years ago in order to get these in place. And if members would wish me to go out to find 2 more, then again, more than happy to do so.
Right. So shall we do that then?
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
Agreed. All right. Fine. So no, and do we need to accept this report? I think we got the useful debate. We know where we are, and we will come back and circulate members as and when we get what the new arrangements will be.
Chairman, I suggested earlier on that we had an additional recommendation, and I think, given the strength of feeling here, that we should put that one together, which would be for me to amend the arrangements that we have in place at the moment, to look to provide more inclusion of members of the Standards Committee in that, and for me to agree that in consultation with the chair.
All right.
Agreed.
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 Right. Thank you. Right. There's useful debate. Now, item number 8 is the local government ethics standards. That kept you all reading nicely. Anything to say about that? We've got to note that report. I thought it was a lot of useful stuff in it, actually.
Yeah, there is, and it's strange, isn't it? Because, you know, I've been talking there about the fact there's been absolutely no changes with regards to standards regime since the Localism Act 2011, the arrangements you put in place at 2012, and lo and behold, we have this report in front of you. It's been received well by councils. And there's been a number of last year, for example, there are a number of seminars on it which said, were we in agreement with it? And we all said anything which can actually strengthen what we've got in place at the moment, because we have very few teeth at present, would be welcome. It is fair to say that this report lies dormant at the moment. You know, the Parliament has not found time to actually deal with this. It needs primary legislation to change some of the, or to put some of the recommendations in place. What I would say, Chair, is literally just over the last couple of days, there is a consultation exercise which is taking place on a model code of conduct. And that forms quite a big part of this report here. And that model code of conduct looks to bring 2 distinct elements into play. One being that it's believed that codes of conduct should address bullying and harassment, and go as far as setting out examples of how that can manifest itself, And the other thing is councillors' use of social media. Obviously, 2012, very little use of social media is not really reflected in any code of conduct, and it is felt that it should be. And so there is consultation actually going on the code of conduct model at present. And just to say, looking at this from a unitary council point of view, members may be aware that I'm the lead officer with regards to the constitution for both unitary authorities. And one of the things which I've been discussing with my my fellow monitoring officers is that we hope that the code of conduct model comes through in time for us to put that into a constitution for the unitary authorities, for the unitary authorities. Sorry, for the unitary authorities, with any local variations that that would help with regards to that. So this report itself, as you said, it is welcome. It has got a lot of good points in it. It would give you the power for local authorities to suspend councillors without allowances for up to 6 months. That is though where you would require a change in primary legislation. Revised rules on declaring interest, gifts and hospitality. It talks there about local authorities retaining ownership of their own code of conduct, but I've just then talked about the model which we're looking to bring in. A right of appeal for suspended councillors to go to the local government ombudsman, because obviously if we were able to suspend, it is only right that they have an appeal mechanism for that. A strengthened role for the independent person. What I would say is the role of your independent persons at the moment is as strong, I believe it is as strong as it is within this report anyway, so we're great with regards to that. And greater transparency about the number and nature of code complaints. And again, that is something which members here have talked about and that they would like to have reflected in their arrangements, which I said I would do. So, Chair, it is a good piece of work. We are waiting for the code of conduct, which will be part of this. But as I said, it is dormant at the moment. And quite honestly, I can't see Parliament finding the time at the moment to actually deal with the recommendations within that report. But probably it's a question of waiting and seeing. Thank you, Chair.
Any comments? You've had a chance to read this report. Anyone wants to make any comment on it? I mean,
yeah, Chairman, could I just cut in? Yeah, it's an impressive report because we should have been looking at this a year ago, really. But not much has changed since because of Brexit and COVID. What I particularly like in there is the idea of parishes adopting the Principal Council's code of conduct. For Andrew's benefit, I don't know where he was working at the time, but in Northamptonshire, the County Council drew up their version of, I suppose it was the LGA's model. Then they passed it down to the boroughs and districts, and we amended it to fit us. And then we passed it down to the parish councils, most of whom did a good job of modifying it for their use. But there is one parish at this end of the district which instead decided to go it alone and adopt the Oxfordshire model. And when I looked at that recently on their website, it just looks as though it's been written on the back of a fag packet. It's not good enough. It's only one parish, but nonetheless, if we and it's a parish which could easily generate complaints, it just makes it more difficult for the monitoring officer to get to grips with, you know, what is basically a defective code of conduct. So I would very much welcome more rigour in the parish versions of codes of conduct. I think it would be a good idea, and I hope eventually Parliament will get round to doing it. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Anyone else?
Chair, if I can just come in with that, I support that, and I was nodding all the way through that. You're quite right. As a monitoring officer, when a complaint comes in, the first thing that you have to do is to determine which code of conduct they are following, whether it's their own or ours, and then, you know, making sure that you are judging that complaint against the right code of conduct. So actually having one would be very, very useful.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed. But this presumably will eventually go into hopefully the new code of conduct for West Northamptonshire.
Chairman, that's the intentions. I said that we are waiting for the model to come through, but there is no doubt that when I'm writing the code of conduct for the unitary authorities, I will have this document in front of me and we'll be picking up the best practice, at least, even if I'm not able to make further changes because of the fact that the legislation hasn't been passed. But I'll certainly have this in front of me.
Good. Right.
Could I suggest, John, please, that
Yeah.
when the new authority comes into place, the unitary work closely with Danny Moody, or if he's still there, because I do think parish council should be reminded of the code of conduct.
But the parish councils are the ones where we seem to have more trouble than anywhere else.
Well, exactly. And so
but
I think it would be a useful, Andrew, I'm sure there's a big list of things to do, but that might be an early intervention, which might be a positive thing.
But what happens in Northampton where there aren't any parishes?
Well, they have a few because they've got Duston and places, but we've been looking at that on the task and governance task force, whatever it was called, on which I sat, and we were starting to look at that, weren't we, Andrew?
Yes, you were.
We covered complaints and things.
Yes, absolutely did. So Northampton, as you know, is being parished. So they will come under that. But just to say that the code of conduct obviously is there for the members of the principal authorities as well as the town and parish councils.
Yes.
So, it will cover all of the members in the area, irrespective of which level they are actually at.
Good.
I mean, I guess out of interest, at the moment, a lot of the existing borough is parished. Still more is not parished. That area will become the new parish council. That will become the new Northampton Town Council. So it's strange, really, because the existing parishes like Harding, Stone, Duston, Billing, and so on, they're not going to have this kind of direct hierarchical relationship with Northampton Town anymore. They're just going to be parallel to it. It's going to be very strange for them.
Yeah. There are a lot of things to be worked out, no doubt. Right. Well, we're supposed to note this report. That's all we can do at the moment. Is that agreed?
Yes.
Agreed.
Right. Fine. Excellent. So that, I think, is the last bit of I must apologise for everyone for making sort of dog's breakfast of getting into this thing, but I do find it absolutely extraordinary, and it just doesn't seem to work for me very well. So I hope I will be all right for planning tomorrow, but we'll see. But anyway, in the meantime, thank you very much indeed, and I close the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.